Now, I've already prepared a quote, an example, and what I've done here is I've got, mum, dad, and a couple of young kids, right? So just giving a simple example, and then what I do is I click on next, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a quote, and just a simple standard quote, $500,000 worth of life cover, with an accelerated trauma cover of $100,000 of accelerated trauma cover. And what I need to do is, if I want to click onto the next step and include Checkmonster, this is something really important. You do need to turn it on, all right? So the use of Checkmonster is entirely optional, but you do have to turn it on. And to do so, you click on this cog wheel, you go down to Research Report Settings, and here I can choose my default research report, but more importantly, this allows me to turn on that Checkmonster facility. So make sure it's turned on, and then close that. And just as a side point, for those that use AdviceMonster to produce their personalized statement of advice, including our research, you will need to go down to Needs Analysis Settings, and also make sure that this button, Allow Checkmonster to compare your quote levels, is also switched on. This will allow you to produce those Checkmonster reports on the back of your statement of advice. So that simplifies that process there for you as well. So the use of Checkmonster, entirely optional. You can turn it off. You don't have to use it in every case. You can skip this particular step. So I'm going back to this quote, mum and dad, 2 young kids, $500,000 worth of life cover, 100,000 of accelerated trauma. I then click on next. This takes us into what we call research, or Research Monster. And what we know is, so the next step is Checkmonster. What we know on this quote, there's 2 adults and 2 children. All we have to do is select the household income range for this household. So we're not asking for people's incomes or their salary levels, just indicate what their household income level is. Click on the Check Cover Level button, and you will be able to see in the orange bars, this is what we've quoted, the $500,000 life, $100,000 of trauma cover. And in the blue bar, we are comparing this with what a typical quote is done for, 2 adults, 2 children with a household income range of this amount. So we are able to see, for example, life cover, the typical sum insured quoted is actually $800,000 compared to the $500,000 that you quoted. Therefore, there is a gap of something like $300,000. In terms of trauma cover, you can compare your $100,000 versus $140,000. That's the typical amount. There's a $40,000 gap. Now, what about TPD? We haven't even include TPD, but for advisors that include TPD, the typical sum insured is $500,000, and monthly protection, mortgage protection and income protection, the monthly benefit of $5,833, whereas we've quoted nothing. Now, to help your conversation along a bit, there's some things that you might want to point out to your clients. So the chances of being able to claim, or in a situation where you should be able to claim on this benefit between now and age 65, so this is personalized to the client. So between now and 65, there is a 10% chance, and I'm just using trauma as an example, there's a 10% chance of that client suffering a trauma between now and 65, or there is a 7% chance of death between now and 65, and so on. The number of people that include this benefit in their quote, so trauma cover again, 84% of all our quotes include some form of trauma cover. All right, so those are some things for your clients to think about. And I think this data-driven approach supports that meaningful discussion that you are having with your clients about their insurance needs, and you're able to identify the gaps and opportunities that they are missing. Now, some things for your clients to think about, who's going to pay for the mortgage, home help, lost income, rehabilitation, all those sorts of things are things that your clients might want to think about here. Now, there's a couple of things you can do. One is you can re-quote using the typical sum insured. So if I want to go back to step 1 and I want to re-quote with that $800,000 worth of trauma cover, life cover, $140,000 of trauma, and maybe I want to include some TPD, I can click those buttons, and when I go back a step, it will recalculate those on those amounts. Alternatively, we can document some reasons for the gap in their portfolio. So in here, we've got these benefits. We default to no reason is given. But let's say, for example, life cover, we've got some common reasons why there are gaps, and maybe the client has some budget limitation. Okay, let's include that there. Trauma cover, again, maybe their budget limitations. TPD, look, maybe the client wasn't even interested in discussing TPD, so we can document that there. Income protection, maybe the client doesn't qualify for this benefit. And mortgage cover, I can also type in some other reasons to support my advice there as well. So once I've done that, I can then scroll down to the next client, and so this is Life 2, and I'm going to repeat the same process for Life 2. Once I'm ready to carry on, I then click on next. This takes us through research, but I'm just going to skip through that and click on next. And this takes us into our research reports. And what I have here under the research report, I can generate the research report. I like to default to the heat map research report, but of course I can change that to one of these other options. But I can also include that Checkmonster report in my research report. So let me just show you an example that I prepared earlier. As an example, here is my standard research report that I've generated for my client, including all, I can review this at a package level or look at individual benefits or components. But when I scroll down to the bottom, what I can do is it will also include that information that we've just discussed, we've just shared, and that is all documented in here to explain why there are gaps in their portfolio. And I think from a compliance perspective, that is very powerful and very useful. Also for advice monster users, also in their statement of advice, sorry, let me just go back. In the statement of advice, I can also, there's a button there where I can also include that in my statement of advice. So that looks something like this. This is my title page. But if I go right down to the bottom in the appendix section, you will see that in Word, it is also pulled through the details that we've generated out of that Checkmonster report. The advantage is that I can go now and tidy up or add more comments or more information in that Checkmonster report within Advice Monster as well. So that's a introduction to Checkmonster. We think it's a great little tool, very powerful for you to use for your clients. A couple of things that you have to remember. One is these amounts, these sums insured, these are based on quotes. These are not based on submitted or issued business. So we're ignoring any loadings and all that sort of stuff. It's just based on quotes. Secondly, this information will change over time. So we will review these details on a regular basis, make sure that our data is kept up to date. So make sure you check the information on a regular basis. And of course, there is no additional cost to subscribers. So if you subscribe to our great research, there's no extra cost to including Checkmonster. So again, we think Checkmonster is a great tool. It's a great conversation starter. It's a great way to perhaps review your clients, and it's really important to actually identify to your clients, the gaps that they may have in the insurance portfolio, and it's a great way to demonstrate the suitability of advice that you provide them. So any questions, feel free to give us a call, contact the office, and we'd be happy to help you with that. Thanks very much.